welcome. I'm calling to order the Simsbury Board of Education regular meeting. Today is April 22nd, 2014, and with that, we have a number of recognitions here before us. So I will.
Yes, we do. We have a number of students that have participated in the Connecticut Writing Project. And we have so many kids from kindergarten through 12th grade that need to be recognized tonight, along with their families, that we have to divide it into two groups. So we have our first group here, and Melanie Meehan, who is our writing coordinator for elementary, is coordinating this. And Betsy Gonzalez is in the hallway with group number 2. So we will acknowledge group number 1, have a little bit of an intermission, and then we'll bring in group number 2. So I'd like to turn it over to Melanie Meehan.
All right, thank you. The first thing that I wanted to do is just tell you a little bit about the Connecticut Writing Project. It is in its 26th year, so it's been around for a long time. And what it does is it honors student writers from across the state. And it invites student writers every year to put forth their best writing in different genres from kindergarten through 12th grade. So you could enter poetry, some of you entered essays, some of you entered fiction, some entered personal narratives. It could be all different genres across all the grades. Typically they have over 1,000 entries. So to get to this level of selection is really significant, because the other piece that I would just say is that of those 1,000 entries, they are strong writers within the classes, and they are the best writing of those strong writers. So we're not just talking any writing from the state of Connecticut. So the Connecticut Writing Project hosts this every year. On May 13th, they have a reception at UConn at Jorgensen Auditorium, where they serve sandwiches and cookies and soda, and more importantly, they honor the writers, and everybody gets to go up on stage and receive certificates. The people who are honorable mentions are listed in this magazine. You will all get copies of the magazine. You will all get to go across stage and get your certificates and shake hands. You will also this year get to meet and listen to a lady named Rita Garcia Williams, who is the keynote speaker. She's a famous writer. She was a recent recipient of the Newbery Honor Award, which is one of the biggest awards that children's writers can receive. So that's who will be speaking to us and inspiring us on that day, and I'm looking forward to hearing her. If you want to Google her, or if you want to go to her website, you can read all about her and get extra excited, or you can read One Crazy Summer, which is one of the most famous books that she has. So that's an exciting piece of that. I want to speak directly to you guys for 1 minute. I don't know if you've heard me say about the 1,000 students. Over 1,000 kids entered this contest. So of those 1,000 kids, they all probably looked around in their classrooms and they were thinking, I'm a pretty strong writer. Like, you guys probably look around your class and you think, I'm a pretty strong writer in my class. Yeah? Yeah. And of that class, and of all of the writing that you did, you probably picked the piece that you were proudest of, was one of your best pieces, right? Yeah? And you probably worked on it extra hard, polished it out, got it really smooth, got it really good, the best it could be, right? Yeah? Did you do that? Did you do that?
That's right.
Yeah? So did every other kid who put their writing into the contest. So for you to have been selected is a really big deal. Let's clap for them. So I also want to just acknowledge the board and your commitment to writing and the writing workshop, because for many, many years we have been able to do the writing workshop in Simsbury, and not all districts do that. We have a board that has really committed to doing the writing workshop and has a philosophical commitment to it and a financial commitment to it. And because of what you do, our teachers get great training, I get the job I have, and more importantly, at the end of the day, you guys get the writing experiences that you get. And that's really, really because this group of people in front of you is so committed to the writing program and believing that writing is an important skill for you to have. So we should also clap for them. And then before I ask you to stand up and introduce yourselves, and I'm going to do that, I'm going to ask the board or anybody else if you have questions or comments about the Connecticut Writing Project.
Well, I'm glad you're having them to introduce because we might have a few questions to ask of some of the students about
You might have more to do than just introduce yourself.
their chosen pieces of writing. So very good, quite an honor.
All right. So how about we have all of you stand up, and parents, after they introduce themselves, we'll have them turn around so that you can get your photo opportunity. But we'll first have them introduce themselves to the board. If you want to just say your name, teacher, your school, and maybe what writing piece you put in, if you remember, you can do that. Okay? Olivia, you want to start? You got it?
My name's Olivia. I'm from a story called Lost. I'm in Mrs. Broderick's class and I go to the Scott Humane School.
Hi, Isabel Dorman. I'm from Henry Yates. My teacher is Mrs. Young, and I submitted a personal narrative.
I've been in no class until I do sister and I go to Scott Humane School. My name is Ashley, and I submitted a piece called The Audition, and I go to Ladder Lane School, and my teacher is Lisa.
Good, good, very, very nice.
Do you have any questions for them?
Great. Well, I'm going to ask Olivia and
Who's that?
Isabel. What were your chosen pieces of writing that you did? Your writing that was chosen.
I wrote a narrative about a past sixth grade experience, a field trip.
Huh. Very good. Very nice.
Look at that. What's
Good.
that?
Good. Well, you all must be very, very proud of
Alice, do you
your
want to tell us
writing.
what you wrote about?
Oh.
Very good. How about you, Lila? And Ashley?
I wrote a story about how I auditioned for a play called Cosmo Blues.
Good. And Vivian? Oh.
Was it true?
All right. And Megan? Right. Do you play basketball? Oh, of course. Great. Very nice. Very, very good. Very good. Very, very, very nice. Well, congratulations to all the parents of these students, and we give you a hand.
And then if you don't have any other questions for them, what I'm going to ask is if this group can exit out that door, we'll have them.
Can they get their pictures?
If the students.
Oh, I forgot pictures. I forgot pictures. Turn around and face your parents and smile. Here, Isabel, can we back you up a little bit? There you go. All right, let me out.
That's great.
Smile, everyone, smile.
It's your big moment.
Nice.
Righty. All the, oh, one more. Absolutely. What? Oh, we don't want a picture of that, do we? Jacob?
My feet are back.
Your feet are back. Pardon? It just went. All just going down. All right. Well, during intermission, we can put it up. All righty.
So we are going to go out this way. And I will see you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Now it's all the same. Now it's you.
Nice job, Mac.
Nice. Like this. Fun with this. Very good.
Yeah. Okay.
You've got parents. Come on in. Seats. Come on in. Plenty of seats for the children. We have seats here in front. We have seats in front. And
That's good. Blanket. All good, right?
I love it. I love it.
All right. So have everybody. Okay, so round two.
Yep. Okay. You all hear that? Okay, and I'm going to show you something else which is really special, which you're only going to see here. Watch this. Can you hear that? Well, SCTV, I'm going to do this again because we also have another audience of young students and children here. You like that? Want to see it again? I do this. I'll tell you something else. Look up there. See that camera? And look behind you if you can turn around. See that other camera? Those are cameras. And when I do this, guess what? You're on TV. You are. You're all on TV, and your moms and dads. So when you're on TV, what are you gonna do? Smile, and you're gonna speak loud. Not quite in your playground voice, but just a little louder. Okay? Great.
All right. So we are here tonight because this group of students are all significant honorees for the Connecticut Writers Project. I think that actually this group are all published writers, which means that their pieces will appear in a magazine that's something along these lines, which you will get on May 13th. Have any of you been there before? I don't think that in this group there was a repeat award winner. No, so this is going to be your first time there for everybody. I want to tell you a little bit about Connecticut Writers Project. I'm going to say it for you and for all of you parents. The Connecticut Writers Project is in its 26th year. They have been asking for students across the state of Connecticut to submit their best writing work throughout the year, across different genres, across grades kindergarten through 12th grade. So assuming that none of these are 12th graders, they can do this again, and they can win again and again, and they can go again and again to stores and be served cookies and sandwiches and soda, and then be presented a certificate and walk across the stage at Jorgensen Auditorium, and in some cases, read their pieces. I think that we have a few readers in the group. Is that right? Yeah. there are, of the people who are selected to be published in the magazine, they also select one person from each grade, kindergarten through 12th grade, to read their piece. So during the ceremony, after the keynote speaker, you guys, one of you, in our case, we have 2 representatives from Simsbury, is that right? You'll go up and for your grades, whether it's 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, depending on when you wrote your piece, you will be the representative and you will get the microphone and they will put it to whatever level you need it to be, and you'll get to read your piece to the whole audience. And Jorgensen Auditorium is a really special, fancy place. So that's a big deal. What I want to say to you emphatically is that there are many adults who wish that they could get their work published. And you've done it. So that's a big deal. The other thing that I want to say to you is that in the state of Connecticut, there were over 1,000 people who submitted their writing for this contest. Now, when you think about yourself and you think about the other kids who sit in your classroom, I bet you think you're a pretty good writer.
No.
Yeah? Pretty okay? Like, can hold my own with writing? Yeah? Okay? And I bet that for this contest, you picked your very best piece. Yeah? Like, really thought, this is my best one. And of your very best piece, you made it the very best it could be. Like, you did all your revising and editing, and you showed it to friends, and you showed it to your teacher, and you made it really, really, really good. Yeah? You did that, right? Did anybody just write a piece and say, I'm done, and I'm going to just submit it, it's good enough? Did any of you do that? No, you worked really hard on it, right? So did all the other 1,000 people. So that makes your award really, really a big deal. They chose you. A selection committee chose you. They had a whole bunch of people who read all of the pieces and decided that your piece was going to be the piece that they put in this magazine. Let's give these guys a hand. That's a big deal. And then the other thing, before I give you all a chance to stand up and introduce yourself to this Board of Education, which you're going to get to do, so be thinking about that. You're going to get to do that. All right? I want to thank this Board of Education because they have decided that writing is a really, really important thing. And for many, many years, they have said, we are committed to the writing workshop, and we are committed to having teachers get training for the writer's workshop, and we are committed to paying for the programs. We believe in what they believe, and we'll pay for it. And that's a big deal. They paid for training for teachers. They paid for me to get to do the job that I get to do. And at the end of the day, you have gotten to have the writing experiences that you get to have. So that's a huge deal. We need to really be grateful to this Board of Education and thankful to them for committing to that. So let's clap back at them. Okay, and unless the Board of Education has any questions or comments that they want to ask you before I have you introduce yourselves, I'm going to ask you to stand up. So before I do that, any questions for them at this point or for me about the Connecticut Writers Project?
So, great.
All right, so I'm going to ask that you all stand up. Parents, after they introduce themselves, will turn them around and give you a chance for a photo opportunity. Okay? What I'm going to ask you guys to do is say your name, your teacher, your school, and then the type of writing that you did. Okay? If you want to say what it was, if you remember, you can do that. If you can remember the piece, great. But if you need to just leave it at what kind of writing, you can do that. All right, Sophia, you want to start? You want to come all the way up? And
Hey. Oh, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Lighter, do it right up here.
You can stay here.
Stay right there, Sophia.
So
It's
right
okay.
there,
Stay right
Sophia,
there.
go
Great,
ahead.
honey.
I'm Sophia. My teacher is Miss Champagne, and I go to Tooten Hill School. I wrote an essay about the first time I met my baby brother Charlie.
Oh. And is your baby brother Charlie here?
No.
Yeah.
He's 2 now.
He's two.
I'm Emily Feeney. I am in Miss Bruno's class and go to Tooten Hills School. I wrote a poem called The Gamer.
Very good.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jack.
Good job.
My name is Jack, and I go to my teacher's Miss Walker, and I go to Squadron 9. I go to movies about nature.
Wow.
Very nice.
My name's Nate Park. I'm in Mrs. Walker's class. I go to Squadron 9. I wrote a non-fiction story.
Oh, very nice. Waves.
And I wrote and I wrote this piece, non-fiction
Wonderful.
Do
Very.
you have questions?
Well, all your pieces, just and we look forward to reading the book with all your pieces in there, because all you children and students give us grown-ups sitting behind the table here inspiration when we read your writing. So and many of us wish that we also had the talent to write such wonderful poetry and non-fiction and fiction. So congratulations. Well deserved. And to parents also, congratulations.
You guys want to turn around?
Dave, you can turn. Why don't you turn around for the monitor? That's great. There you go.
It's great. It's great.
Yeah, one of the things that I didn't say to this group, I'm just remembering that you can hear now as you're taking pictures, is that the keynote speaker this year is Rita Garcia Williams, who just recently was a Newbery Honor Award winner, and for her book One Crazy Summer. So if you wanted to Google her or read that book, that's a great one. She'll be there talking to the kids and speaking to them afterwards too, and shaking their hands.
And I would like to just acknowledge before we finish up tonight is that we have several teachers in the audience, Mrs. Billings, Mrs. Walker, Mrs. Kinzer, and administrators as well. I hope I didn't miss anybody. So thank you for coming and supporting the kids. That was really great of you to do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Have fun.
Take care.
Okay.
It's a copy of this one.
That's a tough act to follow coming up for the rest of the agenda in the meeting. With that we are now into the public audience section of our agenda. If anyone in the audience is interested in addressing the board, you may do so. And seeing none in here. And quiet now with all these children and babies in here. All right, we'll now move on to Board of Administrative Communications. And Jacob, welcome.
We missed you.
It's good to be back. I wish Patrick the best in his recovery from his wisdom teeth surgery that he had yesterday, I think. So hopefully he recovers quickly. But I'd just like to say I did have the opportunity to go with the rest of the student reps to the CAPE convention a few weeks back. And I got to ask the governor a question for the second year in a row, so that was good. And we got a picture with him, which was nice too. And we met with Representative Hampton and a number of other people at the Capitol. And then we were also able to go on, what radio station was it?
WRCH 100.5.
WRCH. I think it aired last weekend?
It aired last weekend at 7 a.m. So unfortunately, I didn't get to listen to it, but I will. We will send you the recast of that.
All right, so the athletics, it's sort of the start of the spring sports season. Boys rugby tomorrow is at home versus Madison at 6 o'clock. Boys lacrosse is away versus Southern tomorrow at 7. Boys volleyball, first home game tomorrow against Bloomfield at 5. Girls golf at Simsbury Farms at 3 against Newington. A few weeks ago as well, I think Patrick already reported on this, but we had the FBLA conference, which was my last state leadership conference, and I'd just like to say thank you to my advisor, Mrs. Manning at the high school, for all that she's done for not just me, but all the business education students. The Stock Market Club, we're well into the Congressional Stock Market Challenge now, and we're looking forward to investing our donation from Connecticut Wealth Management shortly. The Model UN is hosting the first annual international dinner on Thursday. And seniors, it's that time, May 1st, so we're making our final college decisions.
All righty. Okay, good. So, a lot going on. Very, very good. All right, and Jacob, you had Congressman Esty. She visited
Yes, we did.
high school recently.
She visited the Monday of the week before break, and that was great. So she took a bunch of questions from students, and I think it was great for all the APS government students to be able to interact with her a little bit. So it was a good opportunity.
Out of curiosity, what were some of the questions students had posed to her?
There was a lot about like the campaigning process, what she's thinking about going into her re-election bid in the fall, those kinds of things, and also she talked about a water resource bill that she's been working on, which a lot of people hadn't heard about, so it was good to hear about that too.
Good, very good. And also, I'd like to acknowledge Mallory and Brian, our other student reps that are here. So, anything you would like to add? Anything? All right. Good. Okay. Good. All right. Thank you, Jacob. Always a pleasure having you back. Susan.
I got to participate in my last Henry James service day today as a parent anyway. Not to say I won't ever do it again, but it was great. And we have a very clean town. These kids looked really hard for trash. I was at Weetog Park for 2 hours as we combed the woods and the trail, and the kids they worked hard, and they were split up all over town, and I saw them mulching in front of the school, and they were over at Curtis and along the bike trail, and they went out in mass and did a great job today. So.
Great. All Henry James?
In the 8th grade.
8th grade.
It's an 8th grade service day.
Great.
That's great.
We've been doing this for several years.
Yes.
Yeah. You've been doing it for several years.
Yes, we have. So it's always good, and it's fun for the kids to get out of the building and kind of service the parks they play in, which is great. So it was good.
Had a good day.
It's a good day.
All righty. Tom.
Nothing tonight.
Mike.
All set.
Chris.
Nothing, Lydia. Nothing tonight, Lydia, thanks.
Tara.
Just a reminder that this Thursday is our district staff recognition. So we'll be having festivities on the district level of Tooten Hills Thursday afternoon, where we recognize employees with milestone years of service, starting at 10 years upward. I think we're recognizing a 45-year employee this year, as well as any retirees since June 1st of last year up until this time. So again, extend the welcome to all Board of Ed members, but it's a day that we always look forward to in recognizing the great dedication and commitment of our staff members across Simsbury.
Is that a record? 45?
No, it isn't.
Someone
just retired at 50.
Yeah.
40.
Marie Miller, I think, might be the record holder, but I would have to check on that.
Check on the details, but yes.
Just
45 is
just
still.
wow. Just wow. Just wow. That was 3 when she started.
Friday.
Great. Looking forward to it. Bert.
Okay, just a few items regarding the status of the budget process. Based on last week's Board of Finance meeting and Board of Selectmen's meeting, there'll be the final step will be the May 6th referendum, which will be from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. at Henry James School, and we encourage everybody to get out and vote. We'll be mailing out, residents should be receiving very shortly the annual Town and Board of Education budget mailer, cooperative effort that we do each year, and that gives a bit of the basics on what voters will be seeing when they go to the polls. For the Board of Education operating budget, it was moved forward at the requested 1.05%, and there are a number of capital projects. The one that goes to referendum will be the Squadron Line main office project due to the size of that cost estimate. And all of the other capital improvement projects were also moved forward with the exception of one. The Board of Finance tabled the first floor Henry James hallway renovation project, and our plan is to have the opportunity for Brian to get some feedback from his building and then bring forward to the Board of Education at the May 27th meeting some of that feedback regarding that project, and then the intent is to go back to the Board of Finance at an upcoming meeting for that project. And I think that's all I have.
Aaron.
I have 2 items, just to remind everyone that we have an early release Wednesday next week. The focus of that on Wednesday will be the end of the year conferences on the teacher evaluation piece. It's sort of the last part of the teacher evaluation that we're unrolling. So all principals will do a presentation to the faculty, and teachers will have opportunities to engage with each other in preparation for that. Another professional development opportunity that we have on Monday is a Teachers College staff developer that will be working at Henry James with the English Language Arts Department, both 7th and 8th grade. And the focus of that work Monday will really be working with English teachers to engage students in high-level discourse and book clubs. And so we're excited about that opportunity on Monday. And Brian and I will both participate with the teachers on Monday with that.
Good. Good. All right. And briefly from the legislative piece of it, as you know, the legislature is in its final few weeks because the legislature will, adjourn come May 7th. But in the House and the Senate is now where they're debating a lot of the bills and the amendments. And the act concerning the Uniform Regional School Calendar has been postponed for another year. So that's really good news. The other day I presented testimony before the Achievement Gap Task Force. As you know, there's many task forces in existence, and they are finally, after 2 years, coming forth with their master plan. So more will come forward on that. As you know, Peak Committee will be adjourning again on Thursday, so they will be coming through with some new areas about teacher evaluation. And pre-K funding is still in flux as we speak. The governor has a new proposal using some de facto funds, so stay tuned on that. We will see how that moves forward. The Special Education Task Force, another one, is still ongoing because they have now proposed 2 more initiatives that will be coming forward. And really, at the end of the day, any of the bills can be amended. There's thousands and thousands of bills that have been put forth, and many from Education Committee. So at the end of the day, many of these bills will die, and many of these bills will be passed, but many amendments to existing bills will also come forward. So we're ramping up, hopefully, for the end of the session, May 7th. And with that, CABE is offering their legislative wrap-up of the 2014 General Assembly, and that is on Tuesday, May 13th. At the LOB. So we will hopefully, they'll adjourn by then, and then we will give a wrap-up of what has happened this past legislative year. All righty, with that, yes,
There
sir.
was one thing that I'd like to point out that I
Absolutely.
did forget. The Dallas Brass concert is on Friday night at 7 p.m. at Simsbury High School.
All right.
And you can order tickets online or from a Henry James or Simsbury High School band student, or you can call the SHS band office to order those.
Very good. I've seen signs around town too. Great. Thank you. All right, moving forward, we are now on Exhibit 1, Recommended Actions. Approval of minutes of April 12, 2014 meeting. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any abstentions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Motion passes. We are now on to Exhibit 2, non-renewal of non-tenured teachers.
Okay, we'll pass that to Sue Lemke, who will review this.
Great. So in accordance with Connecticut general statutes, local boards of education prior to May 1st of every year have to vote on any contracts for non-tenured teachers that would be non-renewed. In these cases for declining enrollment, programmatic changes, or teachers returning from guaranteed leave. They're not reflective of performance concerns. But each of these teachers, the names I'll read in just a moment, I've met with personally to discuss with them the board's anticipated action and the reasoning for it. So with that, I would move that the board move that the contract of employment of the following staff members be non-renewed effective June 30th of 2014, and that the superintendent of schools is directed to advise such persons in writing of this action. And the following teachers are Beth Broderick, Michael Catanese, which is actually 0.4 of a full-time contract, Katie Connolly, Nicole Chris, Mary Drynan, Leah Forlivio, Andrea Gallo, Kristen Judah, Amanda Kozorodsky, Deanna Matis, Emily Ortman, Kelsey Parenti, Matthew Pascucci, and Dana Tracy.
So moved.
Okay, second? Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. We are now on to Exhibit 3, End of Year of Fiscal Authorizations. Thank you, Sue.
You're welcome.
We'll go to Burke.
Okay. You might recall last year we had some conversation about why do we do this every year, and we did some historical checking with Dave Holden, and he said that these motions were largely unchanged since he arrived more than 30 years ago. So in terms of the motions that we are requesting this evening, there's 3 of them. The first 2 relate to state and federal grants, asking that the superintendent be authorized to act as the board's agent in renewing annual applications for state and federal grant programs. And the second relates to transferring funds at the end of the year for accounts where there is a surplus to accounts where there is a deficit. And then the second part relates to employment, and over the summer months where the board is typically not meeting for July and August, we're asking for the superintendent to be authorized to hire staff during those months, and that would be with the approval of the board chairman, and so that would be our request so that we can finish hiring over the summer months.
Good. All right. We'll take the...
You want me to read them?
Yes, please.
Move that the Simsbury Board of Education authorizes the superintendent to act as the board's agent in reviewing applications for state and federally funded programs.
Very good. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Actually, I do. Just one question. On this one, I know we do this every year. What in particular, which applications for state and federally funded programs come through? Are there?
It really is giving us the opportunity, if something, there are some programs that we're not expecting. Like last year, there were a couple of new grant
So these are really
programs
the
that happened.
non-expected ones
Yeah.
that come
And some
through.
fall in the summertime as well.
That's right. Okay.
So if there was any issue that required
Sometimes the due
administrative
dates,
approval.
they extend the due dates a little bit, but, I think it's if anything else comes up that we'd want to be
On
able
top
to
of,
act on.
absolutely so. All righty. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Move the authorization of a transfer of funds from these accounts in which a surplus is anticipated into those accounts in which a deficit is anticipated, and that the unexpected balance be returned to the town treasury account at the close of the fiscal year.
Very good. Thank you. Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Wait, just
Yeah, go ahead.
who So I know up above it's the superintendent who's given the authority to. So when you talk about the transfer of funds, who's responsible?
Ultimately, through the Board of Ed policies for the business office, it would be me.
Okay,
You'll
so
find
it's
that
you.
in the
Okay.
Board of Ed
All right.
policies on business operations.
Thanks. Just wanting to know who to blame.
It's always Burke. Always Burke. Starts with Burke and ends with Burke. And he can fill you in between.
Or congratulate.
There you go.
That's right. Good. Was there a second? Second. And all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
And last, move that the superintendent, with the approval of the board chairman, be authorized to hire staff for the 2014-15 school year during the period of July and August when the board is not in session.
Very good. Your second?
Yep.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. We are now on to Exhibit 4, Culture Enrichment Committee donation.
Burke
All
has
right.
this one too.
This is the
Burke's
first
on
of
tonight.
3 generous donations. I think the board's becoming familiar roughly 3 times per year now. We will be accepting the gifts from the various elementary PTOs to fund the cultural programming that happens in all of the K-6 schools. And the Cultural Enrichment Committee is the group that gets those selected and scheduled and coordinated, and those funds that come from the PTOs are now held in what's called our Board of Ed program fund, and then we sign one contract with the groups that are coming in. So this is for I believe the third and final session, and we would ask the board accept this generous donation of $5,597 to allow for our spring programming.
Very good. Do I hear?
Moved.
Any discussion?
Second.
Second, thank you, Mike. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. This is very, very generous to continue.
It's a great program.
All right, we are now on to Exhibit 5, Seaports donation from UTC.
Okay. This is a $6,000 donation that we'd be asking the board's acceptance from United Technologies to support Henry James Memorial School's participation in the National Sea Perch Challenge in May. This is a trip of 6 of our students along with chaperone to Hattiesburg, Mississippi. It's a national competition, and Brian can give a little bit more detail. This is the second year, I believe, that we've done well in the state competition.
Right. That's right. So this is our second consecutive year when we've sent teams to a national level competition. So we're very proud of it.
I think the Board of Ed Curriculum
really
Committee, we were able to see.
Last year?
We saw that at the Curriculum Committee, John.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
I saw the video.
Yeah, it was very cool.
It was very
The thing in the pool.
Underwater,
Yeah.
The dives and, yeah.
Right, yes.
Very interesting.
Very neat.
Brian, who's the teacher that's kind of spearheading?
Brian
Okay, thanks.
This is only the second year we've done this program, isn't that right?
That's
Two?
correct.
So we're 2 for 2?
That's correct. That's correct. So we've done very well at the state level both years, and we did well at the national level last year. So we're looking forward to sending our teams up to Mississippi.
Terrific.
So this would help fund the transportation and lodging for this group, and also wanted to point out that United Technologies has been very generous to our robotics program at the high school level. So we're really thankful for these donations, and thank Brian Foreman for his efforts, and John Cia, as well as keeping their ears and eyes open for these sources of funds.
Oh, that's awesome.
Great.
So I'd ask your approval.
Do I hear a second? Let's
So moved.
move.
Second.
Any discussion?
Excellent opportunity.
It's great.
Terrific.
It's absolutely great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. We are now on to Exhibit 6, the gridiron donation.
Okay. So we are very excited to bring before the board a proposed donation of $25,000 for the first phase of some renovations and upgrades to the Simsbury High School weight room, otherwise known as the strength and conditioning room. And Dane Street, Director of Athletics, as well as Amy Muska, our PE and Health Department Supervisor, had an opportunity to work with the Gridiron Club that put together a really well done formal proposal that spelled out in great detail what their vision was, how they'd like to be able to provide some transformation to this space, and have worked closely with us and went on a fundraising campaign. We have the Gridiron Club president here this evening, Dr. Girardi, and going to give him an opportunity to speak also. But we have a very aggressive time frame. We're trying to make a window between sort of the and just before the end of school, where there isn't any programming in there because there's summer programming, to try to make this happen, and working with various other staff, including Evan Gross and Jeff Osborne. There's been a lot of effort that's gone into this. So we would ask you to consider this donation, and I wanted to give Dr. Girardi a chance to give any further comments.
Thank you for the introduction. I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the program. It's been a team effort, and we have a group on the Gridiron who put together this project for some time, but we worked with the school the entire way in order really to be as transparent. Word used a lot, but we want everyone to be aware of this project, and also that even though the Gridiron is sponsoring it, it's designed for all student athletes at the high school, not simply football. But I'd be happy to answer any questions. I don't want to take much time. Thank you.
I have a question. What equipment are we replacing? That's been old, used, needs to be refurbished?
A lot of the. Go ahead.
Well, the weight racks are primarily the target, but we're doing so well in fundraising, we're going to expand that to other equipment as well. The room has a number of things in it, some aerobic equipment, which we weren't looking at initially. It's mostly weights, free weights, and what's called these weight racks, where the students do their squats, bench press, and this sort of thing. And the racks that we have now were in part furnished by the Gridiron Club a number of years ago, before my time, but they're very outdated, and they're not really as functional as they could be, and as helpful as the kids could use. And so the goal was to put in 5 of these rack devices, which are fairly impressive. They're in the picture, in the proposal, if you'd like to see it. It's also on our website. But so it's primarily that, and then dumbbell weights, and also through discussing some things with Amy Muska, some things like racks for the medicine balls and some other things. Since our fundraising is going so well, we actually have some more things. We're waiting for the school to tell us what they would like, and we'll be happy to supply.
That's great. That's great. Very generous donation. Very good.
Will the PE classes be using this space as well, or is it just for the student athletes?
No, it's definitely for the
for all the kids.
Instructional space, which is why
Fantastic.
right
Thank you.
Right in this planning stages, that's why Amy Muska and Dane have been a part of that as well, to make sure that it continues to be an instructional space that also serves all student athletes, and it's something that we can be very proud of. So if
timing-wise, this is going to work?
We feel it should work. Once the check is received, we already have quotes, and we're going to work to get something ordered, and it's just some logistical issues to work out with those in the high school, and we feel it's very doable based on the information that we've received.
Does any updating of the strengthening room have to be done? I mean,
of the
room itself.
We're sort of focusing on those things that can be done quickly, and then there's an additional phase. This is phase 1. That would include some of the really improvements to the aesthetics of the room, and then we would do some of the upgrade of the walls and There's some minor floor work and things at that time. And I wanted to talk to you about that further, but I just was waiting for that first.
Okay.
What, can I ask one question? What are we doing with the old equipment?
That'll have to go through the Board of Ed surplus, Board of Ed policies, so we'll have to make that publicly available.
going in there?
Yeah. That's right. No, thank you. Can I make a motion now?
Please.
That we propose the gift of $25,000 to Simsbury High School strength and conditioning room be accepted.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Anyone else have questions? You wanted to continue with something else?
Just after your,
All right.
to your motion.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you
so much.
For all of your good iron hard work.
So there's a letter in your packet this evening from Dr. Girardi that also relates to the future second phase. And they have an opportunity, as you'll see in this cover letter dated the 21st, that they've done extremely well towards their goal to date, but there is an additional donor who would like to make a sizable contribution that would allow them to complete the project. And this individual has been a longtime supporter of the athletic program and has asked that there be the possibility of having the facility named for one of their relatives who is deceased. So we've attached the one-page, it's a very concise Board of Ed naming rights policy that was approved by the board back in January of 2013. So this would be our first time through it. And what it does say very, very clearly in the third paragraph of that, the first sentence of that third paragraph, is that basically the board will direct the superintendent to establish a committee subject to the board's approval that has got a superintendent or designee, building principal, other faculty, and so forth. So we'd like to, just sort of be able to kick that process off. And at the next meeting, the first meeting in May, which I believe is the 13th,
Correct.
we would want to have this as an agenda item. And you'll note that in the middle paragraph there, the very short paragraph, it talks about the board identifying a little bit about the criteria that it would like to be considered. So we'd like to be able to come back on the 13th and I'll be thoughtful about how to proceed down this road.
Good. Thank you.
So, one question, do you need us to direct something? I mean, it says direct on that, so
Yeah.
I'm happy to move that now if you want.
I don't think it's needed tonight. I think Matt would like to be able to come back and give you some thoughts on what that committee would look like, and you can
But
certainly decide.
but I mean, thought your question was, yeah.
Whether you go, I'm just thinking, do you need us to your timing purposes? Because I'm happy to make that motion now, that if needed, we direct you to start the committee process.
I think the consensus is what's necessary, and not in the sense that we need to vote on that, but we.
As long as
we
you're in
will-
concurrence.
If you agree that we
this is something we
can
should be
begin
doing,
this
then,
process, we'll
we'll
begin
just
it with more
proceed.
information that comes back on the 13th.
Be more formal.
Does that sound okay?
I'm fine, I'm reading the language and it says direct, so I don't know if that requires a motion, because I'm happy to make it and say,
Why don't we do it?
go.
Why don't we have why don't we do the motion to make it formal, and just, is that okay?
Sure, I
Go ahead.
move that the board direct the superintendent to establish a committee pursuant to the naming rights to further the process identified in Dr. Girardi's letter.
Very good. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay.
Okay, you got that? Yes. Thank you.
Tom did.
I did.
Tom, second. All right. Will that help? Yes,
Sure.
help you? That's
Yep.
good. All right.
All right.
Very good.
13th to have further.
Good. We look forward to it. And thank you. Thank you again, Dr.
Thank you very much.
Very much for the
Thank you.
conclusive
Very much.
proposal that is in front of you, and I will pass on to other board members to take a look as we go forward. All righty. We are now on to Information Reports, Exhibit 7, the Communication Plan. And that is,
I'm going to pass that off to Sue Lemke, and we've had a communications subcommittee from the Board of Education, and they've had a couple of meetings, conversations along the way, and so Sue's going to give us an overview and some direction of this committee at this point right now.
So this is just a brief update on some of the conversations and items that we've discussed as a subcommittee, and certainly invite Tom and Tara to chime in at any point during this update. But what we really want to do is to couch our conversations. As you know, you've seen a draft of the Board of Ed communication goal as it's listed there, and in just a couple of weeks, the board will come back to the drafted strategic goals for the next 5 years. But in really looking at this, to effectively communicate with all stakeholders and really engage them in Simsbury's improvement efforts of the Simsbury Public Schools. So what we took a look at as a subcommittee about what are our current practices, and this whole concept of what we push out for communication and what we invite, which we've denoted as pull communications. So in your folders, you will find a strategic communications calendar. And this calendar has been put together collaboratively, but with the Martha Hogan finishing touches on it. And what it does, it gives a school year from August into July, what communications we actually push out to different stakeholders in our community, whether that they be staff, whether they be to you as Board of Ed members, parents, guardians, other community members, and students. So that is kind of the foundations for this document. And as you can see, it's a lengthy document, which you could conclude that we do a lot of push communications, which is very, very good. We share a lot of important information about what we do to these different stakeholders in Simsbury. I think the crux of our conversation really came around, how do we assess the pull needs? How do we determine from our stakeholders what additional things they want to hear about and they want to see communicated that we may not be? So we discussed the potential of surveys, whether that be to our parents, to students, to other community members, and we do survey these different stakeholders from time to time. As you know, we had a very popular calendar survey that went out, and we got a lot of response. We also are biennially required to survey around school climate efforts. So what we really need to do is to think about alignment with particularly these climate needs assessment or other needs assessment with our schools. And to do that effectively, what we really must do is get the input not only of Board of Ed members through subcommittee participation and full committee participation, but also input from our administrators, from teachers, from students. It's important because we don't want to over-survey either, because then it loses effectiveness as well. So again, nothing that we have to put in front of you this evening as far as a survey, but certainly something that we're looking at in the future, again, to assess these pull needs. So again, I promised you it would be brief, and I welcome any questions. But again, just wanted to give just wanted to give you an update on the work we've been doing.
So Sue, I know we talked about the surveys, maybe the timing of those surveys. I mean, could you spend a minute talking about, when and how it might be possible to introduce a new survey that goes out, say, at the end of the school year? I mean, is that something like for next school year, or is that not practical for this year? I mean,
I think we want to be intentional, and we want to frame it under our communications goal. I don't know if that is practical for this year, to be honest with you, if we really want to do it well, because it would be something that we would organically develop. But certainly, we want to make sure that we get your feedback, get the feedback of administrators about how to make that work, so we don't overdo it, and we do it with intention and fidelity.
Okay. I think it would be useful to get feedback from, parents and kids about not only their school experience, but also their extracurricular experience and kind of their experiences with the coaches. And sometimes that's easier to do in a survey format than it is kind of face-to-face, especially a young person talking to an adult. I just think that there's a place for that. Maybe it's the end of the school year.
Did we not do something like that a few years ago?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, when was the last time we did that?
Was that about the school?
Comprehensive survey.
The comprehensive school climate survey was done at this point last year, and we surveyed parents and students in grades 3, 6, 8, and 12 because we thought that those were really good benchmarks, and we will continue to do that. That survey in and of itself is very detailed and very time consuming, and because you're surveying so many, you have to really put a lot of things in place. So that's why we've decided to do that survey every other year to be the most effective. Certainly. There are other ways teachers will sometimes solicit survey feedback. Again, more teacher dependent, not common and blanket practice across the district. But again, I think it's important to assess how do we garner that information from these constituents.
And there's also, I think, I don't know what you talked about, but there are ways to get feedback that are not survey-ish,
Yes.
like, almost like in offices having notes, like, do you have questions? Do you have things, there are things you're looking for? Those kind of things that are more informal that people can just drop off in their school offices that you hear what someone's worried about immediately, and you can say, oh, well, we can address it this way, or maybe we should put that in our pile of things that we need to work towards.
Right, or there are different, to your point, there are different avenues that can be utilized, whether that
you might not be
be
aware of.
open forums or office hours. And if there are, how do we communicate those practices so people know how to give their feedback on a variety of topics that are important to them?
I think what we're basically saying is we do a lot of good things. It's how to do it better or more efficiently. We don't want to be doing things that we were already doing. We don't want to do too many of the same things, I think was what we were trying to look at. At the moment, we're good, but, as people can give feedback here and there, at different events, we can have little notes saying, do you want to tell us how this went? But before we do a big survey, it might be better to just kind of get a real understanding of what we're doing now that people enjoy.
Right, and I think it's timely in that, again, we have a draft goal, which we'll talk about more in an upcoming Board of Ed meeting, that really speaks to this. So, and it really gives us impetus of this work.
The only thing I see, because I think this is a fantastic list, but based on this year's budget experience, my only suggestion, and maybe you vetted this, went through it, I don't know, but it seems that there's been a lot of confusion about when we actually start our budget process, and I'm wondering if maybe there isn't a mailer that should go out in January telling people Board of Ed is beginning their budget process. Here are meeting dates, because people seem to
afford to send out a mailer.
well,
It's not in the budget.
but there has to be a way for us to communicate that more effectively, because people are coming late to the party.
I think that's a great idea.
And I think that sending the mailer once we've voted on our budget doesn't necessarily help us. And if we're going to spend the money on a mailer, I'd almost rather it be at the beginning of the process to say, this is your opportunity to get involved. Come join us.
Can that be incorporated into Matt's periodic
I
letters?
absolutely believe it could.
It is.
But I'm thinking outside the school system is kind of my thought, is that, I know we communicate pretty effectively within the school system.
So you're thinking community-wise?
I'm thinking community-wise, because there are a lot of people who seem to not realize our discussions start well in advance of most of the other budget discussions.
And the point of that is to get people engaged in the
Yeah, that's right.
conversation. So
Right.
what's the best vehicle in which to do that? Is it
Exactly.
through, the superintendent's newsletter clearly gets the families of the school-age children, but what
Right.
is it beyond that? And maybe it is SCTV, maybe it is.
And I
other
know we
ways
do
to
those
that.
programs to try to let people know where we are.
Right.
But based on the feedback this year, I feel like that message somehow isn't getting to people.
That's a good.
Thank you. That's
Even
great
if we do
feedback.
a media or print or something on that, because we start this budget process in November when we really start our first discussion.
But the conversations when it begins to really get into the
Right.
public
At the board
discussions.
level.
It is a year-round discussion.
Yeah, it
these
is.
days.
It is.
Right.
Actually, it is a year-round discussion, but
And that means that people have trouble figuring out when it gets important for them, because they know they hear about it, so they don't know when the real important moment is.
Right.
No, that's a really good point. So if we have these practices around the budget, let's publicly share the timeline before the dates start so that people can earmark them and plan accordingly.
And we have local newspapers that would be happy to,
Right. Use the Valley Press or, yeah.
Correct.
right, because actually, Burke's, he usually does it on a colored paper. That is a good timeline of the dates for budget process that you give us in November, December. So something of that with dates.
Yeah, just, again, so that it's not at public hearing that we're hearing people for the first time.
Great. Thank you for that feedback.
Question, going back, what is, maybe I'm, just can't remember, here on the other communications, MPAC meetings? because the stakeholders or community, what does MPAC mean down here? I just don't remember what that means. Every other month? I'm just curious.
I don't know if that acronym is.
Yeah, I'm just curious what that was. All right.
We'll have to
I'm
find
not
that
sure.
out.
I'll have to find
Yeah,
that
I'm
out.
just curious.
Somehow it got on there, but we'll have to figure
I
out.
was curious.
There is a list of Simsbury acronyms, and
I know
I'm
that.
actually
I just-
pretty good at them
It doesn't
typically.
have colored boxes either.
It has no, it's a gray. If you
Yeah,
look
so
really
It's a
closely, it's a
gray?
staff box.
Oh, it's staff. Oh, all right, staff. I just was
Staff.
curious. Maybe I didn't see the gray either. Thank you for
Which I
pointing
think we
that
need
out.
a new color.
Well, if you notice, there's nobody responsible for it, so
Okay, then that's,
Staff takes care of itself.
we'll get you some more information about that.
I was just curious.
There are a
with
bunch
that.
more in there.
So you thought this was going to be so easy, Sue.
That's it. No, that's great.
No, this is a good calendar for scheduled communications and especially for target audiences.
It is. It's a great way to look at in a baseline kind of way what we do and where we can enhance, and to also make sure in a nice color-coded way that
Right.
we are addressing all different stakeholders of our community.
I think it's a good time also to mention that Martha Hogan is just a hero in our communications strategy, and she comes to communications meeting, and she's just a font of information, and she's can do. You say, sure we can do it, sure we can do it, sure we can do it. She's just very positive and very helpful and does a great job.
I'd like the record to note that we finally found an acronym that no one knows what it is.
Sorry for pointing it out. Of course, I had to.
Someone is at home saying, I know what that is.
Had to
All
happen
of
for 15 years, but
With all, yes, I was going to say with all the years in this room.
All right, question. Just on our next SCTV show, what will
I
that?
don't know
do
the
we
topic. Katie, do we have
Do
a
we have
topic for the SCTV?
Squadron Line School was taping today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sure. Introducing Maggie.
Thank you.
Meg was there too.
Just stuck it there.
So that will be aired
Okay.
in May. No, right? April.
Yes,
will be aired in
yes,
May.
it was
Right.
done.
And then we'll do one more for June.
Is there
Is it one
anything
more
on
for
the-
June or May for June?
We haven't decided that.
Possibly it may be Beth and Mike Luzetti.
Okay,
the new-
and then
new
for
hires.
June. So that's it. Good.
Okay.
Good.
All right.
Looking forward to the
Thank
new
you, Sue.
SCTV programs.
You're
Very good.
welcome.
Thank you, Sue. All righty, we are now on to Exhibit 8, Policy First Reading.
Okay, we're back to me. So this evening, just again, a first read for the board on two specific policies, and we'd just like to give you a little bit of background. The first is a new policy, brand new for the Board of Education, Policy 5130 around physical activity and student discipline. So in the last legislative session, effective of July 1st, legislation requires that students in grades K through 6 be given 20 minutes of physical activity every day. Okay, so that was our current practice, whether that be recess or physical education time or a combination thereof. But what the legislation required was that boards of ed adopt a policy specific to this physical activity and student discipline. That teachers, administrators could not detract from that mandated 20 minutes in a disciplinary way and deny students that 20 minutes of activity. Doesn't mean the students have to necessarily participate, but that's offered. So the policy that is pretty straightforward, it's a recommended policy through Shipman and Goodwin, really denotes what is required by law regarding physical activity and student discipline. It gives a definition of a school employee, what happens if someone fails to follow that policy, and actually, again, outlines what exactly we're talking about regarding discipline in that 20 minutes of time. Okay? The second policy is not one that's new to the board, but certainly has some revisions regarding homebound and hospitalized instruction for students for a number of different reasons who may require homebound or hospitalized instruction. And the most major change to this policy, which is actually something that's really good for us, is that if there is medical recommendation that homebound instruction be instituted instituted. It used to just be a physician's note. What this change in policy really requires is that physicians have conversations with our Director of Health Services, which is Sue Beardsley, and has that discussion talking about why the student is unable to attend school for a verified medical reason, and that homebound really, or hospitalized instruction, really kicks in after a student has been out for 10 consecutive days. And what that really has done is increase the collaboration between our Director of Health Services and the medical professionals in the community. But that is the most major change to this policy.
And again, this is an update to the policy. Why was the update kind of put forth? Was it due to, again, legislative changes?
Yes,
or
it was.
Okay.
Yes, it was. Mike?
So I think I get the point of the discipline activity question, but I'm just curious the way this is phrased. If a teacher in K through 6 tells a student to stay during recess for the question, they want to ask him something, him or her. The way this is phrased, that to me might be considered discipline.
Could you point to exactly the phrasing
the phrase,
of it?
The board prohibits school employees from disciplining elementary school students by preventing them from being in the entire 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. I think there's a question of intent that we're saying here, that did the teacher intend to discipline the student? But the way I read this, the simple act of having a student stay, I got a question, stay with me for 5 minutes, could be considered discipline as that's read. And I would not think we'd want that to be subjecting teachers to a problem if they were to do that.
No, we would not.
And so I'm just curious, when my first reading of this, and I'll think about it, is there's nothing in here about intent. This is just, if you keep them in the room, that could be considered discipline, even if it's simply, I want to show you the homework or something as benign as that.
Mm-hmm. So that's a really great question, and one that I could also run by our council for clarification.
Is this the statute? Are we taking this from the statute?
Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's directly from statute, but it is Shipman and Goodwin's interpretation of that statute, and it's a policy that they're recommending for their schools, their districts. But I can certainly bring that back and clarify that and make sure, because you're right.
Certainly, the intent is that if a student doesn't bring their homework in, you have to stay in for recess. That's you can't, that's the form of discipline. But I hear what you're saying, Mike. I want to talk to you for 5 minutes could be interpreted as denying them that opportunity.
Yeah, I just wouldn't want a teacher to
I do too.
benignly do something and then suddenly you're looking at a disciplinary action under this policy going, what did I do?
Right. Right. Let me seek some clarification.
So you can send them 5 minutes late to music, but you can't send them 5 minutes late to recess.
We don't want to go there.
So certainly I will get clarification.
You're right,
and
Mike,
get back
that
to you.
might be misconstrued too.
Depending on who's construing it.
Right, but that also could be, and then if the student goes home, it could also be.
I was kept in.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
for recess when, in fact, it wasn't the intent
Yep.
to do that.
Okay.
Sue, homebound hospitalization. My only question as I'm reading it is I'm thinking about the kids that I've known over the course of the last year with concussions who are repeatedly doing half days. Do they get covered under this somehow? So if you can only go to school for 2 hours and now you have to go home because you can't handle anymore, how are we dealing with that? Is that covered under this? Do we provide supports to them?
Well, it really depends upon the individual and what the actual recommendation is from the medical staff. But in many ways, we've done half days. We've done medical excusal for a part-time for certain classes, let's say, if they miss them. So it really is dependent. This is more for the students who are completely out for 10 or more days, and not necessarily to kind of the partial day piece.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. There's also, when it is appropriate, a student might also be referred to the PPT process. And so again, depending upon what the needs are, there may need to be IEP, Individualized Education Plan, that acronym I'm very familiar with, modifications that need to be made through program through that process. Because that's a possibility too. Absolutely.
A medical for medical
Okay.
reasons.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And those will come back at the May 13th meeting for
They will for a second
approval.
reading.
Right. Or for second reading.
For second
For
reading.
second reading.
So the new policy is 513L.
Yes,
Is that one, and you're gonna
that's
check
brand new.
the
And I will
brand new,
check
and
in
then-
the question regarding intent.
Okay. Very good. Okay, we are now on to Exhibit 9, quarterly budget analysis. And
Okay. All right, I'm going to be brief this evening. We're looking at, we've highlighted 5 general line items out of our 77 major line items that are in variance with our projections at this time. And the major change in terms of revenue projections is really from our last quarter, is really that we have received 75% of our excess cost grant, which is what gets applied in the current year towards our out-of-district tuition. So we do have most of that received, and we are projecting an out-of-district deficit of about $82,000, up slightly from our last quarter. The good news is that the projected deficit from our last quarter was $19,000. We're closing that gap significantly. Currently, it's $6,000, and we expect by the end of the year we'll be able to close that gap. We spent a fair amount of time during the 14-15 budget process explaining, where a lot of these unanticipated costs were coming from, and making sure that we're taking action for next year to not have those issues. We've continued to have some positive surplus in electricity and other utility savings, which helps to offset some of the cost to take down the first phase of the modular classroom. So we're going to continue to look very closely at all spending for the rest of this year. Understand that people get a little nervous when we're talking about, well, is this particular purchase essential to get through the year? But that's what it's going to take to just make sure that we can finish in the black. So in terms of the second page, where we look at our track our overall variance by our major categories. As you've heard me say each time, the format of this assumes that we're going to have 4 even quarters of spending, but with our school calendar year, it continues to look somewhat funny until we get to that last month. So we're still showing that we're looking like we would have a positive variance in our instructional account, which is our largest. We certainly expect that to be very close to zero by the end. Insurance and pension looks like a little bit of a deficit. We expect that to also catch up. It really is mainly the outgoing transfer accounts, which is those out-of-district tuitions, where we think that portion of the deficit will not totally close, but we have some other areas where we expect some surplus to offset it. So, entertain any other questions you have, but we're still hopeful and feel we're on track.
Okay, questions? All righty. Good, thank you.
Thank you, Bert.
Thanks, Bert.
All righty, we are now at our second public audience, and anyone in the audience wishing to address? Seeing none. Nothing. I have to ask it anyway.
Get a little.
I will now make a motion. We will move into executive session to discuss the evaluation of superintendent. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second? Second? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Motion passes. And our next Board of Education regular meeting will be Tuesday, May 13th at 7 p.m. here in the Board of Education conference room. All right, thank you.